Okay, let's unpack this. What if? What if? What if your biggest enemy isn't out there somewhere? Not some external force, maybe not even the devil, like the source says, but something way closer.
Your own past.
Exactly. We're doing a deep dive today based on this really powerful message from Pastor Andrey Shapovalov. It tackles that exact idea, the baggage of the past.
It's heavy stuff, and it affects pretty much everyone, right?
Right. So our mission here is to get to the core insights from this source. We want to understand why the past has such a grip, why it's so hard to let go.
And crucially, what the source suggests is the way out, the path to freedom.
And we're sticking just to what's in this material, which, it's interesting, it draws on his personal walk with Jesus, his own experiences.
And some big biblical stories, too, like Joseph, the Israelites in the desert.
So get ready, because this is where it gets really interesting based on this perspective.
One of the first big ideas that jumps out is if you have a past, you're not just living with it, you're actually building your future from it.
Yeah.
And often, that past becomes your worst enemy.
Your own past. Wow, that's intense right out of the gate. We usually think of enemies as, outside of us.
Totally. But the source uses this really simple contrast. Think about little kids.
Okay.
They don't have past baggage, right? So what can they do? Anything. They can be Superman, they can drive a giant truck, build a fort to the moon.
Because nobody's told them they can't yet. There's no failure history holding them back.
Exactly. Pure possibility. But then, we grow up, we gather experiences, and we also gather failures.
Right. Things that didn't work out, people telling us no.
And those experiences, those failures, according to the source, they start to dictate what we think is possible or impossible for our future. They draw the lines.
So maybe failure itself isn't the real issue here. The source has a different take on that, right?
It really does. It reframes it completely. It says, look, it's not failure. It's just learning what not to do. The source actually calls it my school what not to do. It's just data, information gained, not necessarily a stop sign.
But even with that schooling, that experience, the source talks about having a calling. And if you have one, it doesn't just vanish after a failure.
No way. It sticks with you. It bothers you, nags at you. The source suggests that if you're truly called to something, you won't feel comfortable just settling. Comfort isn't really for the called in that sense.
This idea of being held back, even by your own schooling, it brings us to Joseph. That's a major story the source uses to hammer this point home.
Yeah, Joseph. Most people know the basics. Sold by his brothers, betrayed, ends up in prison after the whole Potiphar's wife thing.
Definitely seems like a victim of circumstance, right? Terrible stuff happened to him.
Absolutely. But the source makes this really provocative argument about why he stayed in prison for so long, years and years. It wasn't just bad luck or injustice.
Okay, so what does the source say was the real reason? The core issue.
It argues that Joseph was stuck in jail, partly, maybe largely, because of his past, specifically because he wouldn't forgive his brothers.
Wow, that's a challenging interpretation. How does the source get there?
It zooms in on what Joseph actually said to the wine bearer in prison. Remember, he asks the guy to remember him.
Yeah.
But he adds that he was put in prison without deserving it. And the source interprets that line, I didn't do anything wrong, as proof he was still holding a grudge. Still stuck on the injustice from his past, from his brothers.
And holding on to that bitterness, that sense of injustice. What was the consequence, according to this message?
Everyone forgot him for years. It wasn't until he dealt with that internal stuff, that baggage. The key takeaway from the source on Joseph is he had to process it, become completely healed, no baggage left from that betrayal before he was recognized and promoted.
So his breakthrough depended on dealing with yesterday first.
Exactly. The battle wasn't just external, it was internal.
Which loops back to that idea.
Right.
The battle isn't always out there, it's often in here.
The source argues strongly for that. Often our biggest fights aren't against, external threats or fears of something new. The fight is against ourselves from the past.
Because we carry it. We keep replaying it for ourselves.
Yes. We are our own worst enemy because we're the ones constantly whispering, hey, remember that stupid thing you did? Remember when you failed miserably?
Okay, this leads to another really unsettling idea the source explores. The power of familiarity.
Familiarity, even when the past was awful.
Yes. The source points out how people repeat these incredibly destructive patterns, like marrying the same type of person over and over.
Or, tragically, like the example given of abused daughters ending up marrying abusers.
Why? What's the explanation given?
Because even if that past was hell, It's familiar.
And familiar feels safer?
Safer than the unknown of freedom. That's the idea. Being trapped in a familiar hell can feel more comfortable than stepping into an unfamiliar liberation.
Yeah. That's a lot to take in.
The source even shares an anecdote, like from counseling, about a woman who was punishing her second husband for the abuse she got from her first husband. She didn't even realize she was doing it.
Dragging the past resentment right into the present.
Exactly. And this also connects to what the source calls having wrong motives.
Like trying to prove people wrong.
Yeah, trying to prove something to maybe pastors or leaders who doubted you before. The source says that's not a right motive for serving God, and it actually holds you back. It keeps you tied to that past hurt.
Okay, so this source makes a claim that feels huge. It says our past is actually far more dangerous than demons or evil spirits.
Yeah, that one stopped you in your tracks, right? Seems counterintuitive.
Totally. Why? Why would the source say that?
Because, it explains, demons. Well, they can be cast out. There are ways, tools for that. But how do you cast out your own past?
Right. You can't just command your memories or your bitterness to leave.
Precisely. Dealing with your past, according to the source, needs healing. And that requires a decision that we have to make.
And if you don't make that decision, if you let the bitterness, the unforgiveness, the guilt just sit there,
it will sabotage you. Absolutely sabotage you, your purpose, your ministry, what the source calls God's dream for you.
And the source is really emphatic here. You just won't move forward until it's dealt with.
That's the message. God, according to this view, won't let you step into that new season, new church, new destiny, whatever it is, until that past baggage is handled. You'll stay in jail like Joseph.
But there's that paradox about the jail you mentioned.
Yeah, it's fascinating. The source suggests sometimes you have to kind of learn to love this jail, meaning find peace and healing within the difficult situation. You get whole there.
And only then.
Only then, when the inner work is done, does God say, okay, let's go. It's not about escaping the circumstance first. It's about internal transformation first.
There's another big biblical example the source uses. The Israelites freed from Egypt, that first generation.
Right. The ones who saw all the miracles but never actually entered the promised land.
They got to the border, sent spies in, and the spies came back talking about giants.
Yes. And the source connects this directly to their past. It describes Egypt as this place that was deeply demonic, a place where giants were actually worshipped.
So their memory of giants in Egypt, their past experience, that dictated their fear in the present.
That's exactly the source's interpretation. Their history programmed their response. Their past told them, we saw those things before, we're nobody, we can't win. And tragically, it led them to say, we're going back.
Back towards slavery, mentally at least. Their past literally blocked their future.
And contrast that with the next generation, the ones who did go in and take the land.
What was different about them, according to the source?
They never saw giants in Egypt. They didn't have that specific past experience creating that specific fear.
So the source suggests God often chooses the next generation, not because the older one lacked experience.
They had tons of experience, but they also had too much baggage, too many limiting beliefs formed by that experience to step into the new thing God wanted to do.
Okay, so this all points to a core condition for moving forward, according to this source.
Yes, the past must be dead.
Dead. Okay, what does a dead past actually look like?
Yeah.
According to this message. And how? How do you even get there?
The source ties it directly to seeing the future. It says you cannot step out of your past until you see the future God has for you.
And that vision doesn't just come from anywhere.
No, it has to be shown by God. The source repeatedly says this happens only in my presence, using examples like Abraham or David receiving their callings and visions directly from God.
So if you don't get that divine glimpse of the future, what happens?
Then, tragically, your past becomes your future. It's the only blueprint you have. It's the only material you know how to build with because it's all you're familiar with.
And this isn't just like a one-time thing, is it? The source frames it more like a daily battle.
Absolutely. Every single morning, the source says, we wake up and we instinctively carry bits of yesterday into today. We are collectors of past information and experiences.
Okay, so back to the dead past. How can you tell? How do you know if your past is genuinely dead and buried, or if it's still, alive and kicking and messing things up?
The source gives a really practical test, actually.
Right.
If your past is truly dead, you're not afraid to talk about your mistakes, your failures. It's easy because you're detached. It's just information, maybe even wisdom gained.
But if you're hiding it?
If you're hiding it, protecting it, if bringing it up still makes you feel shame or pain or bitterness, then it's not dead. It's still alive, and it's still influencing you, still dictating things.
It's like that constant internal negotiation you mentioned.
Exactly the analogy the source uses. Every morning you're at this negotiating table. Who's running the show today? Is it past you, the one with all the experience, but also all the baggage, the limits, the hurts? Or is it new you, the one connected to God's future vision?
And the source warns that past you is usually the one setting up the roadblocks for today.
Usually the one creating the stumbling blocks, yeah.
And those stumbling blocks, they don't always come from inside, do they? Sometimes it's other people.
Oh, yes. The source definitely highlights the people factor. People who knew you back when, from your past failures, your mistakes.
They might bring it up, remind you.
They might. And the source suggests sometimes tragically they do it because, maybe subconsciously, they want to keep you down, keep you stuck in the box they remember you in.
That's tough.
Yeah.
The source uses that example of Jesus in his hometown, right?
Yeah, it's a powerful, almost uncomfortable anecdote. Why couldn't he do many miracles there?
Because they knew him.
Because they knew his past. Isn't this the carpenter's son? We know this guy. He used to fix my table. That familiarity with his human history, their perception of his past, it killed or froze their faith, according to the source. It prevented the miraculous.
So your past, even just how others see it, can freeze you.
It can. Which leads to a really controversial suggestion in the source.
Which is?
Sometimes to really break free, to allow the new person God is making you to emerge, you might actually need to sever ties.
Sever ties. With people.
With people who only know you from your bad past, your failures, people who can't seem to see the new you.
Wow. That sounds incredibly hard. Isolating, maybe?
The source acknowledges that feeling. It might feel isolating at first, but it stresses trusting God to bring new people. People who see who you are now, who don't carry that old baggage about you. The source literally says God will give you way more people who don't know you from that past.
And places, too. Places can hold that same energy.
Yeah, the source mentions that. Sometimes the very places where you learned things, where you gained experience, your old training ground, that might not be where God calls you to step into the new thing, because the place itself is loaded with past associations.
Okay, so if the past needs to die, and you need to see the future, where does this all happen? Where does the transformation take place?
The source points really consistently to one place, only in the presence of God. That's where you can truly see the future and truly deal with the past.
How is that described? What happens there?
It's described as the place you consciously lay your past down. The source uses this striking image. Your past self, the one defined by the baggage, is actually forbidden to enter God's glory.
Wow. So what happens to all the painful stuff? The memories, the failures, the mistakes, do they just disappear?
Not disappear, exactly. But in God's glory, they get transformed. Those painful experiences, failures, mistakes, they become wisdom. They become just information, according to the source. They lose their destructive power. The past essentially dies there because its ability to hurt and control you is broken.
The source also contrasts this kind of dynamic present experience with God with something it calls religion.
Right. How does it define religion in this context?
Religion, in this source's view, is being stuck in what God did, focusing only on past movements, past miracles, past glory.
And never fully believing or engaging with what God is doing now.
Exactly. Whereas walking with God is about who he is right now, what he's doing in the present. It's active, current.
So ultimately, this whole process, it really hinges on a personal choice, doesn't it?
Absolutely. The source makes that crystal clear. You decide. Does the past stay alive, painful, destructive, dictating your reality? Or does it become dead, transformed into wisdom, information, experience you can use?
And that choice has direct consequences for our struggles today.
Yeah. The source connects those present negative feelings, the pain, the doubt, the insecurity, directly back to building with past bricks.
What kind of bricks? Like, what are the examples?
Well, the source says doubt often comes from past failure. Insecurity comes from past events that made you feel less than. Pain comes from being hurt before. These aren't brand new feelings. They're echoes, dragged from the past.
Okay, so we're building our present house with bricks from a demolished, painful past building.
That's a good way to put it. And the consequence of not dealing with those bricks, not dismantling that old structure.
If we don't deal with the destructive power of the past, our present, and crucially, our future will just look like the past. Same problems, maybe same failures, maybe even attracting the same kinds of unhealthy relationships, because we're building with the only stuff we know.
The source uses that really striking anecdote here about the documentary, people who lost their memory.
Oh, yeah, the amnesia cases. Tell me about that again.
Due to accidents or whatever, total memory loss. And the source notes how their lives sometimes change dramatically. People who were addicts or abusive, they just stopped.
Because they had no past dictating those behaviors anymore. No memory of the trauma or the habit.
Exactly. According to the source, no past dictating their present struggles. A completely clean slate. Which made it, in a strange way, easier to become someone new, to move on from those cycles.
That's a powerful, maybe extreme illustration, but it shows what losing the negative grip of the past can do.
And the source connects this right back to Jesus saying, be like kids.
Right, because kids live totally in the now, no past holding them back. Everything's fresh, simple, present. A state the source says we need to somehow recapture.
This idea of leaving the past behind, pressing forward, it sounds a lot like that passage from Philippians the source brings up.
Philippians 3, forgetting what is behind and straining towards what is ahead, pressing on for the prize of God's call.
Yes. But what does forgetting mean there in the source's view? It's not like wiping the memory clean, is it?
No, not forgetting the event itself or the lesson learned, because that becomes wisdom, right? It's forgetting or releasing the pain attached to the memory.
It's the pain that sabotages the future.
That's the argument. The pain, the bitterness, the shame, that's what holds you back and poisons your ability to step forward.
Like that counseling story again. The woman needed to forget the pain and resentment from marriage number 1.
Right. To actually be free and healthy in marriage number 2, she had to forgive herself, forgive the ex, let go of the hurt, so it stopped destroying her present.
So the source just keeps circling back to this core message, which is challenging. It's often not the devil, not other people, not even God holding you back.
It's you. It's us. We are the ones telling ourselves, nope, can't do that, based purely on what happened before.
Like Joseph again. The source argues he wasn't stuck because he physically couldn't leave prison, but because he hadn't dealt with that past grudge. That unforgiveness was the stumbling block.
Yeah, until he processed it.
And the source identifies that real enemy voice. It's not usually some external demon whispering lies.
It's that voice inside your own head, right? The one saying, remember when you failed spectacularly? We've tried this before, didn't work.
So what's the counter response? How do you fight that internal critic that's just echoing the past?
A decision, a conscious choice to try anyway, to step out, trusting what the source says God showed you for the future, despite that past voice.
Like a defiant trust.
Yeah, almost like, okay, voice, I hear you, but I'm doing it anyway, we'll see what happens. I don't care about the what-ifs from yesterday, I'm not missing this chance today.
And the source includes the pastor's own personal story here, doesn't it? To really ground this.
Yes. Pastor Shapovalov talks about his first attempt at starting a church back in 97 to 2000, and it failed. Then years later, 2004, 2005, God calls him again. But he was actually happy. He was content in his career as a dental technician. That specific detail is mentioned. He didn't want to go back to ministry.
And all the memories of the past failure must have come flooding back.
Oh, absolutely. All the reasons why it wouldn't work, why he wasn't cut out for it. But he made that decision.
To do it anyway.
To do it for God, despite the past evidence telling him no. And that decision, stepping forward despite the baggage, led to, over 20 years now of successful ministry. It shows the past doesn't have to win if you choose the future God shows you.
Which brings us to what the source calls maybe the hardest deliverance of all.
Which isn't from demons.
No, it's deliverance from ourselves. Deliverance from our own past.
The source makes this really strong statement. Most of us don't even need deliverance from demons as much as we need deliverance from the grip of our past.
And this is based on observation, on experience.
Yeah. The pastor shares his experience seeing thousands delivering from demonic stuff or healed physically, but then, tragically, months later, many would relapse, fall back into old habits, old sicknesses.
Why? What was the reason given?
Because, the source says, they never dealt with the past. The underlying issues, the bitterness, the unforgiveness, the trauma that made them vulnerable in the first place.
It reminds me of Jesus telling people he healed, sometimes, don't go back to your city.
Exactly. The source interprets that as, don't go back to the people, the environment, the reminders that will constantly pull you back into that old identity, that past struggle. You could steal the miracle. The enemy's main tool, according to the source, is reminding you of yesterday.
The source even connects the tragedy of suicide to this.
Yeah, describing it as people who just cannot bear the weight of their past anymore. It becomes too much. He mentions reading suicide notes, confessing past deeds, the burden just crushing them.
And it's not just our own past, is it? Sometimes we're held back by how we view other people's pasts.
Oh, absolutely. You can't really forgive someone, can't see them clearly if you're constantly looking at them through the filter of what they did yesterday.
Or someone close to you might do that to you. They remember your mistakes and can't let you move on.
Exactly. It cuts both ways. But the source does point to the ultimate authority for this kind of freedom.
It says we have authority over darkness.
Yes, over evil spirits. But only God, the source emphasizes, have the ultimate authority over our past.
And how is that authority exercised?
Through the blood of Jesus. That's the mechanism mentioned. It brings forgiveness, yes, but more than that, the source describes it as bringing disconnection, healing, severing the power line from the past to the present.
Okay, so pulling all these threads together, what's the key? What's the path to actually stepping into that destiny the source talks about?
According to this message, it's simple but profound. Only those who are truly disconnected from their past, from its destructive power, are able to fully live and step into their God-given destiny.
And that disconnection, it happens through that healing process.
Exactly. Going consciously into God's presence, making that decision to lay down the past pain, forgiving yourself, forgiving others, crying out to God about it.
The pastor shares a really specific personal moment of this for himself.
Yeah, he remembers the exact day, the corner in his office where he felt like the old Andrey died, where the baggage was finally dealt with and something new, resurrected, began inside him. It was a conscious turning point.
And the pain itself, it doesn't just vanish into nothing, it gets repurposed.
That's such a hopeful part of the message, that very pain. Once it's healed and transformed in God's presence, it becomes wisdom. It's no longer your personal burden holding you back. It becomes a tool, an understanding that God can use to help maybe thousands of other people dealing with similar past hurts.
So the final instruction, the final takeaway from this source seems incredibly direct.
It really is. Stop looking outside. It's not God holding you back. It's not usually other people. It's not even primarily the devil in many cases. It's you.
Understand that, the source says, and stop holding yourself back with the weight and pain of yesterday.
Yeah. The message ends with what sounds like a call to make a decision, like an altar call moment, a time to choose to finally let go.
To choose to deal with the baggage. Wow. Okay, so this deep dive into Pastor Shapovalov's message, it gives us a really powerful, maybe even uncomfortable look at our past. It's not just history, it's an active force.
Yeah, a force that can genuinely imprison us, sabotage our present, block our future, according to this source.
So the core insights, just based on this material,
Yeah.
we have to acknowledge how much influence the past has. Understand its power often comes from unresolved stuff, unforgiveness, even just familiarity.
And then actively confront it, forgive, lay it down. Seek God's presence for that transformation, for the vision of the future. Let the past die there so it becomes wisdom, not chains.
It really flips the script, doesn't it, on where our biggest battles often are.
Totally. And it puts the power, the responsibility to change things right back on our own decision. Our choice to confront and disconnect from the destructive parts of yesterday.
So thinking about all this, here's something maybe for you, the listener, to consider. What would your future actually look like if you truly stopped dragging your destructive past into it?